Our tale begins in the dry expanse of a red wasteland, a harsh region where life barely survives. In this unforgiving place, a lizard is being chased by a pack of laughing hyenas, their eerie sounds echoing across the barren landscape. Before the small creature meets its doom, a spinning weapon slices through the air with deadly accuracy. A young boy, the weapon's owner, rushes in, flipping the roles of hunter and prey. His footsteps kick up red dust as he sprints forward, his eyes filled with focus and determination. With another axe clenched tightly, he charges in like a storm, unleashing his ferocity. The clash of wills ends with the boy killing the pack's leader, its chilling howl piercing the air. The rest of the hyenas scatter, their tails tucked as their courage breaks. The tiny lizard, its wide eyes filled with awe, watches the boy with admiration, its little heart pounding with gratitude. Saved from certain death, the creature begins to follow the boy, much to his annoyance, too small to be useful for food and incapable of hunting. The boy tries to shoo the lizard away, waving his hands and grumbling to himself. Yet the stubborn creature refuses to leave. Frustrated, the boy scolds it until the lizard surprises him by showing its hidden ability. It breathes fire. Like a tiny flamethrower, sparks fill the air, defying the dry heat. Their quarrel is cut short when a loud rumble comes from beneath the rock where they had decided to rest. The ground trembles as a massive beast emerges, revealing itself from its hidden slumber. With no time to waste, the unlikely pair runs for their lives as an enraged rhinoceros-like creature charges after them. Its enormous body tears through the ground, shaking the terrain with its powerful steps. They flee across the desert until they reach the edge of a cliff. Without hesitation, the boy leaps off, undeterred by the height. The wind howls in his ears as he falls, but thanks to his unnatural strength, he lands unharmed, absorbing the impact with ease, a fall that would have shattered any ordinary person. At the bottom, he notices a cloaked figure sitting under a dying tree, an air of mystery surrounding them. The boy's curiosity sparks, but the furious beast is still chasing him, its roars growing louder. Gripping his axe tightly, the boy prepares to face the threat, ready to prove his strength as a descendant of the Black Dragon. The cloaked figure rises gracefully, lowering their hood to reveal white hair and striking blue eyes. Yeah, looks like he's got that Witcher vibe. The beast locks eyes with the stranger, and in a single tense moment, it retreats without a fight. Such is the power of a true aura, an invisible force so commanding it needs no weapon. The boy is left stunned, his grip loosening on his axe as disbelief washes over him. The mysterious figure smiles, their voice calm yet firm, asking if the boy is unharmed. Little does the boy know, this fateful meeting will change his life forever and alter the world's destiny. Ananta, the young hunter, leads his rescuer back to the village. Still lost in thought about the encounter, the villagers gather around, their curiosity piqued by the presence of the stranger. Whispers of both amazement and caution fill the air. Ananta's sister, however, is more worried about her brother's safety. She scolds him for venturing into forbidden lands again, warning him of the dangers that lurk there. To make things worse, he has returned with not only a strange little creature, but also an unknown guest, adding to her concerns. Eager to explain, Ananta introduces the man to his sister Ashta, his voice full of excitement. Suddenly, Ashta falls ill, coughing up dark bile as her strength fades rapidly. Alarmed, Ananta urges her to rest inside, guilt and worry heavy in his voice. The stranger is taken to the elder's home, where he is treated to hearty food and the villagers' warm hospitality. Grateful to the man who saved their young hunter, they welcome him, introducing himself as Gaio. He is invited to stay as long as needed. Though the villagers show kindness, Gaio's presence remains a mystery, sparking curiosity and caution. Meanwhile, the little lizard watches him intently, its beady eyes never leaving him, as if sensing something the others cannot. The village elder assigns Ananta to guide Gaio during his stay, a responsibility the boy accepts proudly. When asked why he has come to such a harsh and remote place, Gaio explains that he is an explorer studying cultures and unique beings from different regions. To clarify, he opens a map, its edges frayed from many journeys, and shares tales of his travels. He speaks of exploring the grand empire of the east, the icy peaks of the north, and the lush forests of the west. Now, he ventures through the treacherous red desert in search of a legendary being, the incarnate known as Ajidahaka, a mythical creature and one of the first 6 beings to receive divine power. Ajidahaka is known as the mightiest among them, both feared and honored. This legendary black dragon has stood as a symbol of untamed strength throughout history. Labeled the Wicked Incarnate, Ajidahaka, the black dragon, is the focus of Gaio's quest, a legend waiting to be unveiled. Mr. Gaio stayed with Ananta and his sister, preparing a remedy by boiling Gajardia leaves to boost her weakened immune system and vitality. Just one sip of the potion made Ashta feel much better. Today, he plans to visit the nearby river to investigate something, and Ananta insists on tagging along as Gaio's guide. Before they leave, Ashta warmly reminds her younger brother to be careful and return safely. As they depart from the village, Ananta notices the adults casting unfriendly looks at the foreigner. It doesn't take long for them to reach the vast river running through the red desert. While grilling and eating fish they caught from the water, Ananta asks Mr. Guyo if he has made progress in his research after a week in the village. Sadly, progress has been slow. All Gaio has uncovered are fragments of the Black Dragon's history. He explains how Ananta's ancestors endured constant invasions from outside forces, but managed to hold their ground with the Black Dragon's aid. Black Dragon, like Ananta, continue the tradition of being warriors, showing reverence to Ajitahaka. That's all Gaio has learned so far. For some reason, the adult villagers refuse to share more, as if they are keeping a secret. Ananta dismisses Gaio's worry, suggesting he's just overthinking things. Changing the subject, Gaio asks why Ananta continues to hunt behind his sister's back. Gaio doesn't mention it, but the boy has been coming home with more and more injuries from his daring trips. Despite the risks, Ananta wants to keep his hunting a secret from Ashta to avoid making her worry even more. He explains that winter arrives quickly in this cursed land, and he wants to gather and store as much food as possible before the cold season begins. The siblings grew up without their parents, who both passed away from an illness when Ananta was just a baby. Since then, Ashta has taken on the role of protecting her little brother. Ananta feels guilty that her life has always revolved around taking care of him, even missing her chance to marry during her youth. To repay her, he hopes to save up a dowry so she can start a family of her own. When Gaio asks if this is difficult for him, the boy simply smiles and replies that it isn't. Everything he does is for the only family he has. Shifting away from heavy family topics, the boy grows curious about why Gaio is so interested in ink. Gaio's answer is simple. He is searching for the treasures of the gods. These treasures are said to hold the power of the first 6 incarnates, relics that defy the rules of the world and human understanding. Whoever obtains these 6 relics, containing the strength of deities, would be reborn and gain a glimpse of a world beyond the veil. Hearing about these treasures, Ananta accidentally mentions the village's ancient scale. After days of no leads, Gaio has finally stumbled upon valuable information. Realizing his mistake, Ananta agrees to tell him more, but only if Gaio promises not to reveal that he spoke about it. Ananta shares a story his sister once told him. While it's true that the Black Dragon helped their ancestors fend off enemies, the dragon's rage didn't end there. It unleashed destruction so severe that the Red Desert was reduced to ash. To control its fury, the Black Dragon willingly gave one of its scales to its followers. With its power source removed, the dragon fell into a deep slumber. The followers built a hidden shrine in the vast Dragon Valley, guarded by the strongest warriors to protect the scale from falling into the wrong hands. Before Gaio can ask Ananta to help him find the shrine, the boy refuses. He explains that the shrine's sanctity forbids outsiders from entering. While Ananta has no problem guiding Gaio elsewhere, the Dragon Valley is strictly off. Gaio doesn't argue but asks Ananta to accompany him to one more location. By sundown, they reach a cliff offering a breathtaking view of the Red Desert, its beauty enhanced by the setting sun. Standing there, Gaio speaks of his dream to find a world beyond this one, a realm that connects to the domain of the gods. Until he fulfills that dream, he will continue his journey of exploration. Even if he has to search the entire world, his quest will never end. Even if it means turning everyone against him, he won't stop. Gaio then asked Ananta if he had ever linked his family's history to the legendary incarnate. He explained that there's a strong chance that Ashta's illness is directly connected to the Black Dragon's curse. Ajitahaka, like the other powerful incarnates, is shrouded in mystery. What is known, however, is that he serves an evil god, ruling over curses and death. It isn't hard to believe that a being who follows such a wicked deity could one day bring harm to the very people it once aided. Gaio continued, suggesting that the Black Dragon might be using Ananta's lineage to pass on the vile god's curse. The boy's parents died from an unknown sickness, and now his sister is gravely ill. Little did Ananta know, the man was manipulating him with his silver tongue. Hearing that the deaths of his parents and his sister's suffering could be linked to the Black Dragon brought him closer to breaking down. Watching the boy slowly accept his version of events, Gaio smiled as if he were a fisherman reeling in his catch. He then revealed a glowing flower and urged Ananta to take it to the treasure guarded by the village. With the flower, he claimed, the Black Dragon's curse could finally be broken, and his sister would be cured of her illness. Gaio was essentially pressuring Ananta to defy the village's rules, though he clarified that he was merely giving the boy a choice to take control of his own fate. Regardless of what happened, the decision would always be his to make. Without realizing it, Ananta was being swayed by a man who seemed like a divine messenger in human form. Later that night, Asta awoke to find her little brother missing. Concerned, she wondered where he could have gone at such a late hour. Wherever he was, she prayed for his safety and hoped he wouldn't catch a cold. If you guessed that he was in the Dragon Valley Shrine, you'd be correct. The guards stationed at the shrine's entrance immediately went on high alert when they saw a white-haired figure approaching. They warned Gaio to stop where he was, as trespassing into the shrine was a serious crime. Ignoring their warnings, Gaio continued forward. One of the guards charged at him with a spear, but Gaio calmly grabbed the spear's tip with his bare hand, leaving the guard in shock. The guard's surprise quickly turned to helplessness as Gaio delivered a swift roundhouse kick to the back of his head, knocking him unconscious. The other guards hesitated, watching as Gaio finished the fight with a forceful punch to another opponent who was already down. With the first line of defense out of the way, Gaio called out to Ananta, asking him to come out of hiding. The boy emerged, still clutching the glowing flower tightly in his hand. For the first time, he witnessed Gaio's combat skills firsthand. The white-haired man had effortlessly defeated the village's strongest fighters. Together, the two of them entered the shrine, determined to complete their mission before sunrise. Even within the shrine's halls, the stronger guards posed no challenge. In just a few moments, they reached the final chamber. The glowing flower's light grew brighter as Gaio let out a mischievous chuckle. He stopped himself from laughing and reassured Ananta that there was no reason to be afraid anymore. Everything was going exactly as planned. In the center of the room, Gaio uncovered the contents of a small tomb. Inside was the ultimate treasure of the first 6 incarnates, sealed away with intricate runic markings. The only scale that is different is Anji Dahaka's reverse dragon scale. Gaio expressed his gratitude to Ananta for leading and helping him up to this point. The boy hesitantly asked if everything they had done would truly help heal his sister. Gaio placed a firm grip on Ananta's shoulder and called him a fool, an idiot so unbelievably easy to deceive. Ananta's heart sank, realizing the gravity of his choices. It was time for the boy to face the consequences of his naive decisions. Gaio grabbed Ananta's hands, which were holding the glowing flower, and forced them toward the reverse dragon scale. The scale and the runic markings reacted violently with the flower. The reaction spiraled out of control, creating a powerful beam of light that shot straight into the sky. This beam could be seen across the red desert, catching the attention of the villagers and filling Ashta with worry. Following the light came the shaking of the earth itself. Deep in a hidden cavern far from watchful eyes, an enormous dark figure stirred, its glowing eyes open, blazing with rage and malice, as if furious over having its centuries-long rest interrupted. Aji Dahaka sensed that someone had meddled with his reverse scale and rose to his feet. He spread his massive wings, shattering the ground around him and sending tremors across the desert. With incredible speed, he soared into the air, heading toward one destination. The villagers, awakened by the earthquake, stared up at the sky in terror. Their god, the being they both feared and worshipped for generations, the Black Dragon, had awakened after an endless slumber. As Aji Dahaka flew toward his shrine, he wondered who would be foolish enough to tamper with the power of the gods. By the time he arrived, the shrine that had stood tall for generations had been destroyed, reduced to rubble. Poor, naive Ananta lay face down in the debris, both of his arms severed by the beam of light. When he regained consciousness, he was so captivated by the sight of Gaio standing in the beam's glow that he barely noticed the agony of his missing limbs. The glowing flower had transformed into something entirely different, something raw and immensely powerful. Gaio gripped its long and sturdy stem tightly, thrilled to finally hold the missing piece of his plan. This was the miracle that would connect the horizons. As Gaio pulled the transformed flower out of the beam of light, his clothes mysteriously disappeared, revealing his sculpted physique built in a way unlike any other. Without a moment of doubt, he drove the hardened stem straight into his abdomen. The brilliance of the flower spread instantly through his solar plexus, coursing through every nerve, vein, and vessel in his body, filling him with boundless energy. After his agonized roars subsided, Gaio was left growling on the ground. It was at that moment that Aji Dahaka arrived, furious and ready to punish whoever had dared to disturb his rest. The Black Dragon demanded to know if the foolish mortal even understood the price of stealing the reverse scale. His deep, menacing voice echoed as he asked the exposed stranger his name. Gaio, smiling calmly, stood unfazed. A swirling aura wrapped around him, forming a cocoon. When he emerged, his wings illuminated the dark terrain. With 6 glowing wings, a grotesque and terrifying face, razor-sharp claws, and an all-seeing eye, Gaio introduced himself as the Wings Incarnate. When Ananta managed to regain consciousness and piece together what was happening, he saw an enormous dragon locked in battle with a bizarre angelic bird-like figure. Aji Dahaka could sense the numerous treasures that had been absorbed into Gaio's body. He initially thought no ordinary incarnate could handle so much divine energy, but he realized he was wrong. The Black Dragon's rage burned hotter as he imagined the fate of those who once held these treasures. Gaio, without hesitation, admitted that he had killed 5 of the 6 original incarnates and taken their treasures. He announced that tonight, he would finish the task and slay the last one. With a powerful flap of his wings, Gaio unleashed a swarm of feathers that rained down like bullets. Aji Dahaka effortlessly used his scaled wings to block the attack, scoffing at the attempt. Without the true divine treasures, the grotesque bird was nothing but weak. He mocked. Gaio remained unshaken by the Black Dragon's insults, fully intent on subduing him, here and now. Aji Dahaka dared him to try. Releasing a blazing column of fire into the sky, Gaio skillfully dodged the attack. his 6 wings proving their worth as he soared gracefully. Accepting the challenge for an aerial duel, the enraged black dragon joined Gaio in the sky. The chase turned into a dangerous game of cat and mouse. The cat were a furious dragon and the mouse a thieving angelic beast. As they climbed higher, with the black dragon close behind, Ajidahaka summoned an array of fire-based spells around himself. Each spell locked onto its target, aiming directly at Gaio. The dark flames were unleashed with devastating speed and strength, exploding like nuclear missiles imbued with unimaginable force. Yuyo focused his power on the singular eye in his chest and chanted, "Let there be light." Bro was trying so hard to be God. As pretentious as it was, the light effectively neutralized the dark flames in one fell swoop. Since his flames didn't do any damage, the dark dragon summoned the power of darkness. It was so menacing that it changed the art style. He slashed with his wings, and the dark hail of blades rushed to tear Yuyo apart. But the wings incarnate simply grinned at such a mediocre attack. He countered with a hail of blades of his own, each one made of light itself. Yuyo flexed his terrifying control and power by accurately pinpointing each dark blade and bursting it with his own. Each of the light blades continued their momentum, eager to pierce the dragon's body. Once they converged and skewered the evil incarnate, a massive and bright explosion lit up the night sky for as far as the eye could see. The villagers could only watch as their god got bodied by the random foreigner they took in a week ago. Meanwhile, armless Anata struggled to get back on his feet. He tried his best to catch his breath, but taking in air to his lungs felt unbearable. Even in such agony, all he worries about is his sister. Finally, the last of the first 6 incarnates had fallen. His once mighty figure has become disheveled and riddled with damage. Juyo, on the other hand, looks like he can go for another god-level battle and be fine. He smugly smiled after destroying the dragon's heart and defeating the final boss. He deserves to be a little smug. His infuriating snicker is pushing it though. Finally, after all the hard work he had put in, he had all the tools to rise to the heavens. And so Mr. Juyo, the wings incarnate, rose to the clouds and never stopped. Ananta looked at the consequences of his foolish actions. Fearful and devastated, he thought he was just trying to help his sister. But he ended up creating a peerless deity. With Ajidahaka's dying breath, he called on the child and asked if he helped in bringing ruin to everything. Ananta trembled under the gaze of the dying dragon as he apologized for his foolishness. As an evil god arriving at death's door, Ajidahaka has no mind to forgive the child's foolish actions at all, and so he bestowed a curse on poor Ananta. A curse that came at the cost of the evil incarnate's physical body, letting his flesh rot away in darkness just to spite a kid. The remaining power in his gigantic frame sizzled and bubbled up. Ajidahaka's remaining spiritual force took the form of pure darkness and ferocity. The body that has been deemed too tough to pierce is ripped apart to make way for the avatar's escape. Ananta stared at the perverse wailing of the evil god, his little mind barely comprehending the horrific scene. Fueled by unfathomable hatred, the dragon's spiritual force took the skies once more. He visibly burned through his dwindling spiritual force every second. But he had one last petty agenda to do. Once Ananta realized where the monster was heading, he felt dread crawling up his spine. This goddamn dragon is heading towards the village. Looking like a physical representation of hell itself, Ajidahaka reached his destination in the blink of an eye. He saw the ancestors of the men and women that worshipped him for generations, and did not even hesitate to burn them all down to ashes. The screams of agony from being burned alive filled the air. Ashta, Ananta's caring and affectionate older sister, was one of the unfortunate victims. The whole village has been annihilated in just one flyby. Ananta cried and cried. He lost his arms, and now he has lost everything else too. But the evil incarnate is not done with him just yet. Before completely dissipating into nothingness, Ajidahaka finished the curse on the boy. He slammed his spiritual body right into Ananta's fragile little armless frame. He entered every orifice, invading the boy's body and slowly reconstructing his severed limbs. His veins were strengthened and filled with the power of a dragon. His heart pumped and circulated pure darkness throughout his whole body, and his physical form transformed into that of an incomprehensible monster made of hatred. Ananta's figure shifted and mutated. His bones crunched and expanded, and his flesh bubbled and ballooned. With this integration, the foolish mortal shall forever wallow in a mire of death and calamity. The kid is turned into a full-blown vessel of the dark dragon's remaining power. Thus, the years roll forward, unveiling Ananta's warpath. A relentless march of vengeance forged in blood, darkness, and fury. A fierce beast once told a valiant warrior that without fangs in his mouth and claws in his hands, his greatest weapon would be something else. In this draconic beast's case, his anger and tenacity are his weapons. He went through a pack of wolves like they were cannon fodder to be ground down to paste. From his blood and sweat, his flesh and bones, he swallows the corpses of his enemies. Targeting the alpha of the pack, the beast ruthlessly bit a chunk of neck meat. With superior force he ripped it apart, making the blood and gore burst out. With the wail of a dragon's rage, he shall kill and kill. In this world, beasts possessing mysterious powers are dubbed as mystics. The few mystics that were made in the form of humans, molded by the gods, were called the incarnates. Most of them helped humanity in their own ways, but there were those who became drunk on their own power. They were thusly dubbed as evil deities. In some random creepy forest, a group of raiders hunts down their remaining prey. They laughed and joked around while slaughtering civilians, with the blood of the innocent still dripping from their blades. They took all the valuables worth selling before heading back to their hideout. They jested that the monster of the woods might be watching. When they saw all the dead wild beasts strewn around the area, they realized that their jokes might not be far from reality. At first glance, it seems like a territorial fight, but it looks more like a massacre. And among the corpses was a man leaning against the remains of a dead mystic. The raiders immediately dismissed the idea that a single man slaughtered all these beasts. Just when they were about to look for loot, a familiar lizard stepped in to bite on a raider's ankles. Before they can get rid of the little critter, the mysterious man awakens. He unleashed a vicious punch that knocked out one of the scumbags. He boldly declared that anyone who dares to lay a finger on his pet will meet their bloody end. Still clueless as to what they were in for, the raiders drew their weapons and turned them to our boy, Ananta. A few years have passed, and he has grown into a bloodthirsty warrior. He warned the raiders that if they still want to see their loved ones, they better leave now. You see, sleep doesn't come easily to him after hacking anything other than animals, but he won't hesitate either. Not listening to his warnings, the raiders surrounded and charged at him. With his trusty axe, Ananta ripped through the battalion of hardened raiders, painting the ground with their blood and innards. Recognizing his threat level, the crossbowmen maintained their distance and locked their weapons on him. As soon as they fired, Ananta took his lizard pet into his arms and shielded the little critter using his body. If he was a normal human, the damage from the arrows would have been enough to kill him. But he is far from normal. Ananta's demon screeched with an unholy sound as the power of the black dragon was released. After all these years, the spirit of Ajudahaka had completely melded into his body. The evil deity took over, amplifying his power and ruthlessness to an insane level, but Ananta fought through it and stopped the transformation halfway through. Dispelling the dark energy, he plopped to the ground and gritted his teeth through the pain. In the end, he was taken alive and was brought to the raider village. The village boss couldn't believe that a lone man could possibly take down such a powerful wolf mystic. While tied up in a post, he warned his captors that they should burn the mystic corpse as soon as possible. When asked why he fought and killed the beast, Ananta simply answered that he was hungry. The raiders who captured him are still wary of the transformation they saw with their own eyes earlier. Their fear is reinforced by the recent rumors of an evil deity that eats dead bodies around the area. But all the boss can see is a human. A human can't possibly leave such a massive and gnarly bite mark on the wolf mystic. That means this Ananta guy is an evil deity in disguise. Hearing their remarks, he scoffed and laughed at their cluelessness. He finds it ridiculous that these low-lives think they are safe inside their flimsy wooden walls. They were stupid enough to tie up an evil deity that eats mystics in mere chains. These dumbass raiders can't even restrain him properly. The unsettling atmosphere was worsened by the stench of dripping putrid blood. The corpse of the wolf mystic has broken free and chomped down on one of the raiders. Ananta had already tried to warn them that it was no ordinary corpse. It's a mystic who has become a servant to another evil deity. In other words, an abomination. The warning bells of the village sounded out, warning the raiders of the emergency. The wolves hiding in the woods have come to rally with the corpse of their leader for a coordinated evil deity attack. Behind them was the silhouette of the horned culprit orchestrating the assault. It's a rotten evil deity that emanates the aura of death. With its directive, the wolves worked together to climb over the walls one by one. Once inside, they took the raiders by surprise. These humans were no match against the relentless charge of the beasts. They had to resort to using fire as a means to stop the downpour of wolves inside the village, burning the walls that protect them in the process. While most of the wolves burned to a crisp, Ananta readies himself for the real fight. His bones crunched and expanded. He beckons to his hunger and thirst to spew and rage. With blood and sweat, flesh and bone, Ananta transformed into the black dragon. His sights have been set on the evil deity, the root cause of it all. He vowed to open his jaws wide and devour it all. Ananta is not messing around. He faced off against the evil deity and threatened to disfigure the bastard once and for all. After he is done, the deity's face shall embody the terror of a prey facing death. As a response, the deity lets out a horrifically shrill roar. From the woods, the rest of the beasts under the deity's control came rushing in. Boars, wolves, elks, goats, and stags poured in, setting their sights on the black dragon. As soon as they got inside Ananta's kill range, they were crushed into meat paste. With his empowered dragon claws, Ananta lunged forward, shredding through the beast's hide like paper. As he gets closer to the mastermind, the deity uses its dark magic. Infirmity becomes you. Its body crackled and morphed, becoming bigger and sturdier for combat. And so the two powerhouses clashed. Ananta did not bother wasting energy on defense. As soon as he got close, it devolved into a full-on bloody brawl. With his claws he slashed and stabbed away at the deity's body. The enemy kept up with his ferocity, responding with vicious slashes of its own. That gave the black dragon an opening to exploit. He grabbed the deity's limb, catching it off guard. He cocked his fist, charging it with the power of the evil incarnate, and sent the deity flying with a malicious uppercut. After sending the bastard flying, Ananta relentlessly chased, chaining another combo, refusing to let up. After maiming the deity beyond recognition, he slowly dispelled his transformation, gradually turning back to his human form. It looks like the fight ended in a completely one-sided manner. Surprisingly, beneath the fearsome form of the evil deity was a young woman with white hair. Ananta grabbed the girl by the neck, yanking her out of the gore. Based on the empty look in her eyes, it seems like she's been moving unconsciously the whole time. Ananta's single moment of hesitation left him open for a sneak attack for a split second. A giant crow came down from the skies, launching sharp feathers. It finally makes sense. The girl was just another victim. The evil deity that had been eating corpses was this giant crow all along. The murder bird's body cracked and shrunk, revealing an old man dripped out with the aura of death. He was quite impressed that Ananta managed to defeat his best puppet. He has been watching the young man since he wandered into this land, curious as to what he seeks. Ananta's not a fan of useless and long-winded drivel. He tossed the girl to the crow, ready to throw hands at any moment. He has no interest in the inane mumblings of beasts. He taunted the crow to come at him and he'll be happy to end the bird's miserable life. Birdman's power is the ability to control the dead. The idea of killing and taking control of the black dragon's corpse to make a much more formidable puppet than the deer is endlessly appealing to him. Casting infirmity becomes you. The dead wolves, and the plethora of beast corpses in the vicinity, regained the fire of life. Even the dead raiders stood up no matter how badly their bodies were maimed. Ananta has been surrounded at every angle. He is on track to be swallowed in the sea of bloody corpses controlled by the crow. The wolves bit on his flesh, arrows burrowed into his skin, blades stabbed into his frame, and the corpses bulldozed him in every way they could. Seeing Ananta's blood flow freely, the crow laughed, and mockingly asked if that was all he had. With his sharp talons, he delivered the killing blow with a supersonic stab. All that's left is the final cry of agony before he finally croaks. Instead of an agonized scream, Ananta's mouth curled into a twisted grin and an amused laugh. The power of Ajidahaka enveloped his body once more, erasing his grievous injuries immediately. His aura overpowered the stench of death, thwarting the crow completely. One look at the black dragon's form up close plunged the crow into the depths of horror he never experienced before. Ananta likes giving his enemies a little bit of hope before he goes sicko mode. Now, he wants to hear this bird croak and howl like the foul beast that he is. Beckoning the power of the evil incarnate, he chomped down and crushed the crow with his fangs. There was a complete and utter mismatch of raw power. With the godlike powers of the black dragon, the crow might as well be a normal chicken dinner. And so, his soul was consumed and incorporated into the sea of countless beasts that Ananta had devoured over the years. While he was mercilessly feeding on the mastermind behind the anomalies in the woods, the woman woke up to the sight of horrors beyond human comprehension. She saw the young man's incorporeal dragon form looking back at her, and a primal fear was instilled in her heart. Stepping away from the hellish scene, Ananta walked towards the girl, making her flinch in terror. He outrightly asked if she had been freed from the evil deity's control. Her head throbbed in pain as memories of a radiant being with 6 wings flashed in her mind. As soon as she mentioned those brightly shining wings, Ananta's eyes flared with fury. He reckoned that she might be another victim of the wings. Ananta introduced himself as the only surviving descendant of the black dragon, the one who will devour all evil deities in this cursed plane and kill the wings incarnate. When the sun came up, the only survivors of the massacre were the girl, Ananta, and his lizard. Still reeling from the shock of being brainwashed, the girl could not understand anything about his proclamation at all. She has no clue what the black dragon or the wings incarnate are. When she tried to remember by digging deep into her subconscious, a jolt in her brain knocked the girl unconscious. It's a hassle, but she might be somewhat useful for Ananta's mission. While she passed out, the nightmare of being endlessly chased by the dear deity kept on replaying in her mind. She slipped on the blood of her victims, staining her body with her sins. The men and beasts that she devoured while having no control over her actions haunted her psyche. And above all of it is the wings incarnate, the sole source of light in her dark and bloody world. His smile brings a sense of comfort, a salvation from all the harm and suffering she caused. When she woke up from the nightmare, she was greeted by a cheerful girl. Based on her bunny ears, she looks like another incarnate. Ananta, on the other hand, ordered his pet, Ruby, to take care of the corpse mountain from the battle. With Ruby's little body, she unleashed a massive flame that burned the remains of yesterday's war. As the fire flared up, the souls of the damned unleashed one last ear-piercing screech. With that, all the abominations that were under the evil crow deity's control have been taken care of. Ananta walked towards the bunny girl and smacked her in the head for bringing him worthless information. As an info merchant, she's quite bad at her job, and Ananta wasted his time with a bad lead once more. But since he took care of the problem in these woods, he's entitled to his pay. The bunny girl is more concerned about the mystery girl's identity though. She doesn't quite understand what's happening yet, but she remembers that her name is Nadia. Bunny girl was quite fascinated to meet yet another victim of the wings incarnate. Apart from Ananta, she brought out a magical pocket watch and pressed down on the pusher. Suddenly, a massive sinkhole appeared beneath their feet. They all fell down the hole. Ananta and the bunny girl are used to it by now. The same can't be said for poor Nadia. After a few seconds of free fall, the group arrived in the outskirts of a town surrounding a giant tree. Bunny girl finally introduced herself as a member of Rabbit's Foot, the largest information vendor on the continent. The ever-adorable info merchant Whitefoot. She and Ananta have been a long-time partner of sorts. Right now, they're in the largest trade city in the south, the city of Carpes, and the colossal tree before them is the White Lotus tree. Nadia interrupted her explanation. While she is grateful that they saved her from the grasp of the evil deity, she has no intention of listening to one-sided lectures. What she wants is some answers to her questions. First off, why did they even bring her to this strange city in the first place? Ananta rudely shuts her up and orders her to follow him. It's better if they just show Nadia the reason why they're here. She asked who exactly this wings incarnate they were gunning for, souring Ananta's mood even more. He scowled and answered that he's a vile beast that fancies himself a god. Whitefoot added that the wings incarnate can impart great power to others, much in the way the old gods made incarnates. But in this false god's case, he imparts imperfect power, such that it's hard to say whether it's a blessing or a curse. Finally, the group arrived in the seedy underbelly of Carpes. The black market is where slaves are being sold. Something happened recently that has caused a boom in the local slave market. Slave hunters are hard at work to bring in all kinds of foreigners and vagrants. They even go as far as selling off mystics. Before Nadia could ask any more questions, Ananta kicked her down to one of the slave houses. When she opened her eyes, she was surrounded by people who had their lives forfeited as soon as they were caught. They are slated to be sacrificed to the wings incarnate. They are the lambs that will be living sacrifices given at the top of the god tree, the fuel for the false god's power. And just like them, Nadia is going to be a key piece that will help Ananta get the wings incarnate. From now on, she will play the role of bait. The rest of the plan will be left up to Whitefoot. Before Ananta left, Nadia asked if he had gathered all these human sacrifices himself. She called him despicable for committing such an atrocity. He's basically using innocent people as tools to get what he wants. But Ananta firmly believes that you can't get revenge without getting a little blood on your hands. Nadia's protest fell on deaf ears, but Whitefoot agreed with everything she said. She jokes that just thinking about all those poor people waiting for their horrible fate brings a tear to her eyes. But in Nadia's case, she has no choice but to play her part. She killed countless people while under the control of the evil deity. It's a bit hypocritical of her to criticize their methods when she had caused more suffering than anyone else. Even if she had not done it of her own free will, it doesn't mean every crime she committed just disappears. Whitefoot asserted that Nadia's anger shouldn't be directed at her and Ananta. She must remember that they share a common enemy, the wicked wings incarnate. Meanwhile, our boy had already arrived at his next destination, Carpes' Coliseum. He's checking his gear and getting ready for more bloodshed. Whitefoot found him in the Coliseum gates. She's worried that they might have overdone it this time around. Nevertheless, she managed to get Nadia to agree to help their cause. Right now, she's being led by the Guardians of the Wings to the temple in the White Lotus tree, as planned. The living sacrifices will definitely be their ticket to meeting the wings incarnate. They have Nadia inside the temple, a place usually inaccessible due to the White Lotus tree's barrier. Offering her as a sacrifice also grants Ananta permission to fight in the arena. The winner of the Battle Royal will be awarded the White Lotus tree branch, gaining an audience to meet the wings incarnate. Whitefoot thinks the plan is way too convoluted. If Ananta wanted, he could have just demanded the attention of the false god by going on a wild and murderous rampage. As cruel as he is, there are certain lines he refuses to cross. He might be a monster, and yet he insists on distinguishing himself from beasts. He is trying to exact revenge while adhering to his ideals. As ironic as that might sound, Ananta just finished a feast after consuming an evil deity. Right now he needs a bit of a workout. He told Whitefoot to stay put and watch him as he slaughters beast after beast. She's just worried that he'll attract too much attention that could derail their plans. In the arena, the fight is already raging on. A line of organized knights raise their shields and spears against a colossal cheetah. The beast snarled, but the captain was unfazed as he rallied his troops. Their formation was disrupted not by a beast attack but by Ananta's sudden entrance. He called them clowns and demanded that they stay out of his way. The cheetah dared to raise its claws against Ananta, and he easily countered with a vicious double axe chop to swiftly end the bout. Whitefoot had already warned him not to draw so much attention. Yet here he was, dicing up a mystic like it was nothing. The knight captain could not believe his eyes. He had never seen a single human overpower a mystic to this degree. With the cheetah weakened, Ananta jumped in and whacked the overgrown kitty in the head. The crowd was speechless as they all heard the crunch of the mystic's skull. Ananta unleashed a guttural war cry that echoed throughout the whole arena. He sets the sights under the god tree, ditching to come up and shoo the wings incarnate up alive. Meanwhile, the human sacrifices, including Nadia, have been escorted past the tree's barrier. The man waiting for them at the end of the ruins assured them that they have nothing to fear, for they are wholeheartedly welcome to his temple. The temple is protected by a barrier so powerful that people call it holy ground. No one knows why, but the Wings Incarnate has established it as his nest and demands living sacrifices. Those who offer sacrifices are given the chance to fight in the Carpe's arena. If they prove their might against powerful mystics, the fighters are rewarded with a god tree's branch. They are then bestowed a great power by the false god, and inducted into the Guardians of the Wings. In order to break through that airtight defense, Nadia will blend in as a sacrifice. She begrudgingly agreed with the plan, but she's still curious as to why Ananta is so hell-bent on killing the Wings Incarnate. Whitefoot can't tell her the exact reason at the moment, but if there was ever such a thing as revenge incarnate, she couldn't imagine a better fit than Ananta. Back to the present. The dubious-looking Wings Incarnate called on to his sacrifices to lift their eyes and behold his presence. He asserted that he is the Holy One, revered by all, the master of the sacred tree, and the one that resonates with the drum of enlightenment in the world of darkness. Behold his holy name Balzac. Bro's name is literally Balzac. He promised that his living sacrifices would know compassion and would attain immeasurable joy. All they have to do is commit themselves to the wings of salvation. One of the sacrifices dropped to her knees and begged for her and her little sister to be spared. Balzac raised his hand, applauding their noble heart, before making the girl's head explode on the spot. Her little sister watched as blood, skull fragments, and brain matter blasted everywhere. None of the sacrifices dared to speak up after that. Balzac plopped down to his throne and insisted that all were equal before death. All he did was liberate the girl from fear and pity. Nevertheless, everyone shall soon be reunited with her in Nirvana. One of the guardians motioned to draw his blade after noticing something peculiar about one of the captives. Nadia finally had enough and summoned her monstrous deer form. Her aura spread around the temple, choking the guardians one by one. She called out Balzac for being a false savior, just another vile murderer. He didn't expect that an incarnate was hiding among his sacrifices this time around. He found it amusing. Vigdressel Cernunus. After chanting those two words, Nadia was cloaked by the dark energy of the incarnate inside her body. She still feels the guilt and burden of being responsible for countless atrocities. She almost succumbed to her own power, but she was brought back by a kid's plea to not lose. With renewed determination, Nadia beckoned Yggdrasil to raise a forest inside the temple. The vines and branches grab hold of the guardians, while the rest of the winding stems form a protective barrier around the sacrifices. Nadia assured everyone that she would protect them all. But Balzac quickly answered back with a lightning-fast attack against the impertinent Faldo. He feels insulted that a nameless incarnate from the borderlands would even dare to challenge someone as renowned as him, but now that Nadia's mind is clearer than ever, she finally remembers that she is the nature incarnate. Nadia was able to block the first attack and didn't feel any real threat. Beckoning the power of nature, she formed a hammer made of Yggdrasil vines. With this wooden construct, she intends to crush Balzac once and for all. With a cheeky grin, Balzac summoned an immense and ancient power as he chanted his spell, Annihilation becomes you. The explosion could be heard all the way down the Carpe's arena. Ananta knew that he was running out of time. Nadia watched in horror as her attack shattered into a million little pieces. Yggdrasil's Satellis, her most powerful offensive spell, was neutralized in a single blow. Balzac asked if that was the last of her unsightly tricks. He snapped his fingers, and a massive creature burst out of the ground. By its decrepit appearance, the creature looks a lot like an abomination. Before Nadia could even process what was happening, two bone spikes had already lodged deep into her body. Balzac probably introduced his grotesque faithful servant to the world. For someone who claims to be a god, he sure has demonic tastes. Carpe's favorite pastime continued despite the commotion above. Ananta sliced his way through every mystic beast that they brought out. He looked into a white tiger's eyes and understood the resentment it felt against him. As a sign of respect, he did not turn his eyes away from the beast's death. With one swing, he crushed the valiant mystic's skull. The knights who had been sidelined didn't expect that they would be pushed out of contention, with the mysterious young man claiming the win. Just as they expected, Ananta was declared the winner of the arena. After the trial, the guardians came out to bestow the branch of the White Lotus tree upon the victor. The leader of the knights, Lord Bernhard, told his men that even if they lost, their plan would still proceed. They are determined to get the branch no matter what. Ananta took the twig into his hand. This is his ticket for the next part of the plan. Back in the temple, Nadia slowly bleeds out after being caught off guard by Balzac's speed. With grave injuries, she still has to deal with the abomination under the false god's control. At this point, she's just protecting the sacrifices out of sheer stubbornness. The people she's protecting had long since fallen to despair. Giving them salvation from the prison of terror is a mercy at this point. Angered by his delusional words, Nadia gained a second wind as she cursed Balzac for being a disgusting evil deity that spreads death and terror. But Balzac believes the true salvation begins with despair. He bypassed Nadia's protective barrier and summoned branches of his own to pick off the sacrifices one stab at a time. In a split second, the people she tried to protect were helplessly massacred. Then came the abomination towering over the nature incarnate. She summoned Yggdrasil once more, stabbing her roots into the monster's deathly flesh. Balzac continued with his deluded godlike savior drivel with an unhinged smile on his face. The branches that killed the living sacrifices started extracting their life essence. Their souls flowed directly into the ungodly abomination. Balzac is simply siphoning their essences into the wilderness of hell, where both life and death coexist. He is immortal, while all humans must someday face death. Therefore, he's the only existence that can bring meaning to insignificant lives. Even his guardians were not spared, using them as vessels. Balzac juiced up his abominations, deeming everyone else as insignificant nourishment for the White Lotus tree to create immortal warriors. He firmly believes that life shall be circulated as the light that protects his noble tree. When Nadia thought of just how many lives Balzac had claimed, her rage flared up. As much as she wanted to bash the false god's face in, she was completely outclassed. He confessed that he has taken so many lives that counting has become meaningless. Before he could finish her off, the temple gates slowly rumbled open. A dark presence barged into the holy ground, narrowly missing Balzac by a hair's breadth. It was of course our boy, Ananta. Equipped with the holy branch, he came in with the intent to kill. Balzac was caught off guard, giving Ananta the opening to stab the false god right in the face. After leaving his prize lodged deep in Balzac's face, he turned to Nadia and praised her luck for staying alive for so long. Unfortunately, the branch of the White Lotus tree wasn't very effective as a weapon against the bastard. All it did was piss off Balzac, showing his true colors. He couldn't believe that someone could kill all the guards and reach the shrine all alone. When Ananta finally got a good look at the enemy's face, he asked who the hell the bastard he just stabbed was. He asked Nadia why she was wasting time with a nobody instead of fighting the Wings Incarnate. Hearing his blasphemous words angered Balzac even more than being stabbed. Ananta dared to step foot into his holy sanctuary, and now he dares to show contempt against the Wings Incarnate. The false god started transforming into his true form, vowing to pull out the young man's irreverent tongue with his own hands. Ananta just told imposters shut your mouth and stop cosplaying as the Wings Incarnate. Lord Bernhard, the leader of the knights from the arena, is also slaughtering the guardians for his own agenda. With what remained of his troops, he rallied them forward to kill everyone who stood in their way. They tried to time it so that they could enter right when the barrier was lowered for the victor, but their target was nowhere to be seen. When he finally peeked through the gate, expecting a trap, he saw the remaining guardians slaughtered and scattered across the stairway. Maybe the mystery man who beat them in the arena is after the Wings Incarnate too. Inside the temple, Nadia asked what Ananta meant by saying that Balzac is not the Wings Incarnate. He reminded her why people call the bastard the Wings Incarnate in the first place. His most recognizable trait is his 3 sets of white wings. Yet this imposter delusionally claims the name without even a proper set of wings. His impersonation lacks effort and accuracy. Ananta was pissed off for yet another wasted effort. He thought he'd get his revenge, but in front of him is just another fake scumbag who loves to run his mouth. Balzac is caught in his lie. He dropped all pretenses and shut his ears off. His remaining guardians charged Ananta with a kill order. They didn't even warrant a full transformation. He turned one of his arms into a dragon's claw and cut Nadia loose. It's up to her to salvage an unsalvageable situation. It looks like 2 of the sacrifices, the kids, managed to survive the massacre. Nadia's task is to retrieve the survivors and scramble to get out of the temple. Ananta, on the other hand, used his single claw to rip the face off these so-called immortal warriors. While he was busy painting the temple with the blood of its guardians, the deathly abomination opened its maw, exposing an unsettling amount of sharp teeth. Aiming at Ananta, it launched innumerable spikes with impressive force. Nadia dove forward, shielding the kids from the impact using her body. Ananta was forced to use his full black dragon form, increasing his speed and dodging the spikes. He countered by launching his whole body against the bird-like abomination at breakneck speeds. With his massive and compact body, he came barreling down like a meteor, overwhelming the abomination by force. The disgusting monster was tough. It can tank clean hits, and it can also dish out vicious attacks of its own. But as soon as Ananta injected a little bit of the evil incarnate's power in his fist, he caused some substantial damage with a single punch. He crushed the abomination's jaw, crushing most of its fangs. If it was a one-on-one, this would have been a cakewalk. But Ananta is up against another annoying bastard. Balzac's supersonic speed and immense power crushed the black dragon's chest under his talons. He praised the young man's strength. He found Ananta threatening enough to show his full power. Summoning his ancient power at point blank, he chanted, "Annihilation becomes you once more." Nadia recalled that this was the spell that shattered her best weapon. Fortunately, Ananta was not dumb enough to get hit by a move with such a long cast time. He grabbed the bird's hand and opened his maw to chomp on the chicken's head. Balzac was forced to cancel his attack and defend with his talons, calling Ananta a mindless barbarian. Our boy tried to land another swipe, but the chicken jumped backward and took to the skies to create space. Ananta chased after him with relentless intensity. No matter how fast Balzac moved, he was always a hair's breadth away from being beheaded or mortally injured. The false god tried to use his advantage in aerial battles, but Ananta kept up with his ridiculous jumping capability. Unfortunately for the black dragon, Balzac was just trying to bait him into a disadvantaged state. With his superior power in the skies, the false god landed a heavy blow across Ananta's body. With the sharpness of his talons, the bird managed to chop one of the black dragon's arms. Ananta roared in pain and annoyance as the endless power of the evil incarnate quickly worked to regenerate the missing limb. Balzac was taken aback. He thought he finally cornered his enemy. He wasn't expecting a cheap skill like complete regeneration. If losing a limb is solved in the blink of an eye, what else can an enemy do? To make matters worse for the chicken, Ananta wasn't just a close combat specialist. Using the scathing power of the black dragon, he can launch devastatingly sharp blows from afar. Balzac tried to defend against the projectile slash with his pathetic little twigs. The branches were quickly cut down, and the slash went on to slice his body in half. The imposter bird chirped with agony. He had never been pushed this hard. His transformation is slowly becoming undone. Even while crawling on the ground, he still views the black dragon as a lowly, insignificant worm. He still has the abomination under his control to keep Ananta busy, and before you know it, the upper half of Balzac's body grotesquely merged with the vile abomination. With this disgusting form, he intends to demonstrate the difference between him and Ananta. Above the largest trade city in the south, a peaceful sunny day was interrupted by a dimensional crack slowly spreading. A fist emerges from the ether, breaking the dimensional barrier like glass. An ominous silhouette appeared before the city, seemingly coming from a boundless space. A hooded figure stepped out of the dimensional crack, setting his sights on the colossal tree. Meanwhile, Balzac is arrogantly displaying what he claims to be his brilliant wings. He kept on spouting that he was the true wings incarnate. Tired of hearing his bullshit, Ananta seized an opening and stabbed the imposter with his claws. Even such a heinous injury wasn't enough to put the dirty chicken to rest. Borrowing the power of the white lotus tree, he spawned some twigs to restrain the black dragon's movement. While the target is held in place, Balzac opens his distorted stomach mouth, and countless spiked fangs emerge. He dropped all pretenses and threatened to grind Ananta into minced meat once and for all. While the spikes were launched, the black dragon readied his claws for defense. The resulting clash kicked up a swarm of debris. Using the dust as cover, the black dragon moved with incredulous speed to get a better angle of attack. When Balzac noticed where he was, the scathing fist of the black dragon was already in lethal range. As soon as his first punch landed, Ananta did not give the chicken another moment to breathe and compose himself. Even with such a primal series of attacks, the black dragon still exercised caution, and dodged as soon as Balzac found the strength to counter. Quickly losing momentum and blood, the dirty chicken felt frustrated. As soon as Ananta landed, Balzac finally saw why he was being overwhelmed with speed. The black dragon's form has changed once more. When Ananta was caught by the twig trap, he did not hesitate to cut off his legs to get out of danger. In midair, he regenerated new legs, adapting their shape and form to be more suited for speed. He is faster than the eyes can see. He can heal and transform. He's practically invincible with the unfair combination of his powers. Even if that's the case, Balzac is still hell-bent on annihilating the heretic that challenges his legitimacy. Borrowing the power of the white lotus tree once again, he tried to catch the black dragon slipping with the same trick. Even with faster-moving roots, he struggled to catch the slippery dragon with legs built for speed. Similarly, Ananta is also struggling. No matter how many times he lands a killing blow, Balzac will keep healing as long as he's connected to the White Lotus tree. If this fight drags on any longer, he's on track to lose the battle of attrition. Ananta set his sights on the tree itself and braced his legs for the longest jump he could perform. He launched himself vertically and punched a massive hole in the temple's ceiling. He created an instability that made the structure slowly crumble. As a result, he was caught by the roots in midair. Balzac laughed at Ananta's attempt to crush him with debris. From afar, this looks a lot like a checkmate. The black dragon is restrained as the grotesque mouth of the abomination opens up. When asked how many lives Balzac has taken, he arrogantly reiterated that counting the number of his victims is tiresome and meaningless. Since that's the case, Ananta can just let the weight of those deaths be the false god's annihilation, beckoning the power of the last evil deity he consumed. The black dragon cast infirmity becomes you. From the hole in the ceiling, the reanimated live sacrifices straight out of the White Lotus tree poured down. With their decomposing bodies, they tried their hardest to cling to the monster that sentenced them to death. They bit, stabbed, and clawed the flesh of the false god that sacrificed them for his own gain. Balzac had killed so many people that they formed a mountain of death surrounding him. The physical evidence of his sins clung to every inch of the abomination, bleeding out of every pore. The only thing he can think of is making more live sacrifices to recover. His deplorable desire to consume life was impeded by a light beam coming out of another dimensional crack. The radiant beam came down like the hammer of justice, pulverizing what remained of the abomination's body. The mysterious being from the boundless space intervened and finished the job. He looked at Nadia with a cold and emotionless glare. The otherworlder then dropped to his knees and lowered his head in complete submission, as he asked if his lord enjoyed this little trip. The white-haired kid that Nadia saved slowly got up. Much to everyone's surprise, the boy's body expanded, his white hair grew, and his voice got deeper. He reprimanded the otherworlder, Baharan, for making such a crude entrance. The man ripped the rags off of his body, exposing a chiseled frame. Under the brilliant light of the sun, Juyo, the wings incarnate, has finally shown himself. Whitefoot watched the bizarre development from afar and reported back to Rabbitfoot. The appearance of the ruptured space in the sky will surely cause a stir. She also identified that the wings assistant had shown up. That pretty much confirms that the wings incarnate himself is in the city. Mr. Juyo walked out like a supermodel after the fight had concluded. His mere presence alone made Nadia's heart pound erratically. Meanwhile, Balzac is still holding on to the tiny sliver of life he has left. He looked up to see the man he had been impersonating and recognized Juyo. As it turned out, Juyo is the cold-blooded lord he once served, the one who removed his wings. Well, his wings only got removed as a punishment for becoming drunk on power. Baharan grabbed Balzac by the neck as Juyo lectured his disgraced underling that his wings were only for those who were worthy of going into the heavens. Balzac still feels the pang of betrayal in his bones, for he was the one who revered his lord more than any other. He sacrificed tens of thousands of lives just to create the body of the abomination and regain his wings. But the foolish Balzac just never realized how truly insignificant he is in the grand scheme of things. Like the Balzac that he is, one touch from his former lord scattered the false god into dust. Under the mountain of decomposing corpses, Ananta opened his eyes. He remembered what Mr. Juyo said to him all those years ago. How he longed to find a world beyond the one they have, a world that connects to the land of gods. Until he achieves that dream, his journey will never end. He will do everything in his power, even if he has to make enemies of everyone else in the world, even if his actions lead to pain and suffering for everyone else, even at the cost of countless innocent lives. Remembering Ashta pumped Ananta's veins full of rage. Baharan regrettably reported that the White Lotus tree appears to have nothing to do with Juyo's endgame. Balzac simply combined the power of the branch with a god tree. It would be shameful to compare it to the world tree itself. At this point, Juyo is more interested in meeting an interesting acquaintance in the form of Nadia. Beaten and bloodied, Ananta climbed up from the mountain of corpses and set his sights on his lifelong target, pushing the black dragon's power to the limit. His claws become sharper than ever before. He sent 2 bloody air slashes forward, hoping to cut the wings incarnate from afar. Before the attack can even touch Juyo, the loyal Baharan jumps in to defend his boss. After all the years of chasing leads and accumulating strength, Ananta finally found the object of his hatred. Like a wild animal, he ran forward, moving faster than he ever moved before. Baharan stood his ground, ready to defend his boss from any harm. When the two finally collided, it was a one-sided beatdown. A single punch from the odd-looking fella blasted Ananta's head cleanly off. With the black dragon's unparalleled vitality, his head quickly reformed and regenerated. From the skull to the flesh, skin, and scales, Ananta became whole once more. His wrath grew by the second. Since it appears that there's no room for talking, Baharan squared up. The black dragon returned the favor with a powerful punch of his own, almost twisting Baharan's neck. While the two titans go blow for blow, the Wings Incarnate's gaze is focused on Nadia. Just when he was about to touch her, Lord Bernard, who had been patiently biding his time, came in swinging with his axe. Such a crude attack was easily avoided by Gyuyo. He praised the warrior's unrelenting drive. Seasoned old Bernhard here has been trying to hunt him down for a while now. On the other side of the temple, the Black Dragon is still trying to brute force his way through Baharan and failing. He can't focus on the enemy in front of him as he's tunnel-visioned on killing Gyuyo. Ananta just wants to rip Baharan to shreds and end everyone's lives. Sensing a change in his aura, Gyuyo's lapdog jumped back in caution. The Black Dragon's body is stretching and growing at a visible rate. His scales are becoming larger to accommodate the expanding flesh and bones underneath. His back split open as the Black Dragon's wings grew into full bloom. With a frightening roar, Ananta surprised everyone in the vicinity. The true form of Ajidahaka has finally shown itself. Spurred by Ananta's frenzy, the evil incarnate has grazed the world once more. Gyuyo smirked, seeing this as an opportunity to have a pleasant reunion with an old foe. Ajidahaka, the Black Dragon, has descended for round 2. In his subconscious, Ananta has been eked out by the evil incarnate. Losing all control, our boy was trapped inside his mind. Ananta didn't know where he was or how he got there, but he knew he needed to get out quickly. The lingering spirit of the Black Dragon appeared before him. It encouraged him to remember the target of his burning desire for revenge. The vile man who took everything from him. Ajidahaka wants the cursed mortal to give his body over to rage and never stop his wailing. In the real world, the Black Dragon raised its claw and pounced at Baharan. Gyuyo's lapdog very narrowly dodged out of the way. Seeing that he stopped speaking, it's obvious that Ananta has completely given up all self-control. Baharan clenched his fist and locked in, calling the young man pathetic for losing his head. The Black Dragon responded to the insult by unleashing hellfire. Gyuyo's lapdog defended himself with a punch that released a powerful golden light. Their attacks collided, causing a massive sonic boom. Gyuyo quietly watched from afar, shielding himself from the residual impact using his white wings. He looked to his side and saw old Bernhard standing still strong. The unquenchable flames of hell threatened to swallow him, yet he remained composed. They may be enemies, but Gyuyo acknowledged Bernhard's resilience. The old warrior rushed in with an axe in hand, desperate to end Gyuyo's world-shattering delusions. But the difference between their powers is akin to heaven and earth. An imperceptible prick almost eliminated Bernhard right then and there. Gyuyo unleashed a targeted flash of light and made the old warrior plop to the ground. The Wings Incarnate turned his attention back to Nadia, telling her that she had changed. In the past, she never trembled in his presence. It's finally coming back to her now. He had met Gyuyo before. He was an angelic figure that served as the only source of light in her blood-soaked memories. He gave her the echo of the branch, proof that she had been selected as a vessel for a great tree. You see, a branch is a miraculous product that breaks down the wall of an incarnate, thus conveying transcendental power. Gyuyo believes that they are the key to connecting the horizons of different worlds. His most earnest desire. The Wings Incarnate walked up to the abomination's corpse and combined it with the branch. The gigantic body, born from tens of thousands of human sacrifices, was assaulted by heavenly lightning until it was molded into a new vessel in the form of a child, molded from countless souls and now freed from the bird's cage. Gyuyo called the kid his brother. With an unhinged look on his face, the chiseled abomination named himself Ziz. Back to the action. Baharan is still impressively pushing back the evil incarnate. He's outclassed in every category, especially in size, but Gyuyo's lapdog is quite a powerhouse. His golden punches can go toe-to-toe with one of the first 6 incarnates made by the old gods. Ajidahaka roared and shook the entire temple down to its foundations. It flapped its wings and slowly gained altitude, blasting through the ceiling as if it didn't exist. The Black Dragon took to the skies. The crumbling temple was destroyed even further. Gyuyo assured Ziz that even if they're going against the evil incarnate, there's nothing to fear. From above, Ajidahaka charged up a massive ball of hellfire, an attack so massive that it threatened to destroy the whole city. When he fired the blazing baldachin, doom and destruction awaited everyone who would be caught in the blast. Gyuyo remained calm. In fact, he took this flimsy attack as an insult, like the Black Dragon is looking down upon him. He firmly believes that the firmaments hold no place for Ajidahaka. With a serene voice, he summoned his godlike powers and cast, "Let there be light." Not only did it neutralize the blazing baldachin, but the light also continued to flash through, eventually reaching the Black Dragon in the skies. By the time the light pierced through the stratosphere, Whitefoot had finished her live report back to Rabbitfoot HQ. The White Lotus Tree, revered by all, has been destroyed by the tremendous powers of the Wings Incarnate. Humanity's only ace in the hole, the Vengeance Incarnate, has officially lost. After the fall of Ananta, the White Lotus Tree lost its magnificent luster and was reduced to a ruinous amalgamation of dead branches. Juyo was dissatisfied with how long the operation took him to complete. Nevertheless, it's time for him, Baharan and Ziz to return to their pantheon. His lapdog opened the portal and a spatial crack appeared out of thin air. Before they left, Nadia asked Juyo why Ananta saw him as a vile beast with delusions of a god. She has no memories of meeting him before, but he felt infinitely familiar. Juyo smirked, only now realizing that the dragon he smoked was that child from all those years ago. He answered that everything in this world is created through direct and indirect causes. When those two elements disperse, everything dissolves. Such is inevitability. After his Riddler-ass answer, he bade farewell to the nature incarnate. Meanwhile, in a faraway land, a scar-riddled muscle mommy's bath time was interrupted by her underling's urgent message. They've just received news of Lord Bernhard's return from the southern outposts. Muscle mommy was glad that her bath was interrupted by good news. She would have slapped Mir if it was bad news. The messenger added that the Lord is coming with an incarnate and 2 humans in tow. It would be in their best interest to reserve judgment until after they've seen their guests, in a fortress strategically built and hidden on a mountain face. Lord Bernhard and the survivors of Carpes entered the gates. After that cursed battle, Lord Bernhard approached Nadia with an invitation to his organization's headquarters. Ostensibly, he wants to work together against the Wings Incarnate, but he's more likely interested in Ananta's power. Furthermore, Whitefoot had disappeared. With nowhere else to go, Nadia accepted the invitation and found herself heading northeast to meet a certain person. They entered the royal hall, lined with war-hardened soldiers from left to right. There's a watchful beast woman, a nonchalant hulking horned man, and entering from her chambers was the scar-riddled muscle mommy. She's the one that Nadia needed to meet. The eldest child and former princess of the ruined kingdom of woman warriors, Valkyria. The head of the people seeking vengeance against the Wings Incarnate. Sitting on the throne is Queen Lagertha Einherjar, head of Levitain. Firstly, she welcomed seasoned old Bernhard with a warm smile and insisted that they omit tiresome formalities. She wanted his report about the expedition right away. Bernhard recounted undergoing the trial of Carpes' arena. Despite some unforeseen circumstances, they managed to reach the temple and meet Juyo, the Wings Incarnate. Bernhard detailed their battle and expressed his shame for losing handily. Queen Lagertha was angered by his shame as a warrior for returning after being marred by defeats. Old Bernhard asserted that no matter how many times he may lose, he swears to be the one to crush Juyo's throat with his own hands. Queen Lagertha was pleased with his determined reply, her laugh echoing throughout the throne room. Then she asked who the incarnate that he brought along was. Nadia was introduced as the Nature Incarnate, a member of a separate group aiming for Juyo's head. Old Bernhard added that she is a new ally who can lend her power to the cause. She helped them immensely with her healing magic after the mission. Nadia agreed to help in exchange for treating and protecting a barbarian man and a plain girl. The girl, the only surviving human sacrifice, is relatively healthy and should be sent to the civilian quarters soon. As for the barbarian, he's still under close monitoring in the infirmary. He is badly injured and unconscious. After receiving the rundown of the situation at hand, she got up from her throne and walked towards Nadia. She offered her hand and Nadia formally greeted the warrior queen. As soon as their hands touched, the queen's grasp tightened as she interrogated Nadia for her real agenda. She threatened that if Nadia turned out to be a spy, a grim fate would await her here in Levitain. Nadia remained composed and replied with a proposal to exchange information regarding the branch inside her body. That confirmed one of the warrior's suspicions. The beast woman raised her claws and warned the queen not to listen to another word coming out of Nadia's mouth. She's been stinking up the royal hall with the wing stench from the moment she entered after all. When confronted about whether she really has the branch of the wings inside her body, Nadia truthfully answered, but she also swore that she knew nothing about what this mysterious relic inside her was. Queen Lagertha reckons that if the Wings Incarnate is searching for his branch in Nadia, she might offer Levitain a unique opportunity that might never come again. Before the meeting could proceed any further, a hurried messenger entered the hall with haste. She asked forgiveness for barging in so suddenly, but she's bringing urgent news. In the civilian quarters of the fortress, an out-of-control draconic beast is causing mayhem and bloodshed. This rampage was reminiscent of the first time that the power of evil incarnate took over his body. Ananta had finally lost it. With the power bursting out of his body, the evil incarnate took over his being for the first time ever. He was just a young boy back then, unable to rein in the overwhelming amount of magic. Harmless Ananta was consumed by the darkness. His perception of his body was erased bit by bit, his conscience slipping away. But even in his dragon form, his gaze automatically wandered in the burning village's direction. Slowly, he willed his monstrous body to crawl towards the fire. With pure instincts alone, he sped up, each step resulting in a booming quake. Halfway through, his speed had reached an unimaginable degree. As he arrived on the outskirts of the fiery village, he instinctively wailed in grief. Young Ananta scanned the surroundings and saw a burnt corpse in the direction of his home. The sight of that corpse and the smell of burning flesh knocked the kid back to his senses. He walked out of the dragon's body and ran to his burning hut. His arms had miraculously regenerated, albeit taking on the darkness of the black dragon. The face of Ananta's caring sister flashed in his mind. Her soft gaze and youthful beauty had been reduced into unrecognizably charred remains. He remembered that the last thing she said to him was to come back safely. Somehow he managed to do that, but at what cost? Ananta took Ashta's charred corpse into his hands, her usual warmth turning into unbearable heat. The kid trembled and screamed his angered heart out to the heavens, tears of blood pouring down his eyes. At that moment, the thought of killing Yuya with his own 2 hands had taken over his mind and heart. He had been dreaming of that tragedy for years now. When Ananta woke up after the battle, he opened his eyes to an unfamiliar infirmary. On his bedside was an adorable little rat girl, watching him sleep. Seeing her only confused him even more. Why is there a little incarnate watching him sleep? Even with all the injuries he accumulated from the battlefield, he forced himself to get up. His mind is still fixated on finding and ending Yuya once and for all. Before he could take one step out of the bed, blood splattered out of all his orifices. He gasps for air, struggling to breathe. His vision blurred, and black bile continuously flowed out of his body. This is the drawback of using too much curse power. Despite that, Ananta still tried to get up and miserably failed. The little rat girl cheerfully skedaddled out of the room to find an adult. After gritting his teeth through the pain and regaining a bit of strength in his legs, Ananta managed to get out of the infirmary. The civilians in the fortress froze in fear as soon as they saw the beaten and bloodied man walking in the streets. Ananta still can't figure out where he is. Looking up, he didn't see the sky. He reckoned that he might be in some kind of underground city. The patrolling guards stopped him from spreading any more unease to the citizens. Judging by his strange appearance, it's evident that he doesn't belong in Levitain. The guards urged him to cooperate with his arrest or die if he resisted. Ananta sighed and stood on business, ready to throw hands even when he's literally 1 HP. The tension was broken by one man's interruption, looking for his child. The guards referred to him as Lord Owl. Ananta saw in this man's hand a familiar burned-off symbol. When he was just a kid, Whitefoot warned him about this coat of arms. An eye surrounded by 6 wings and 2 blades, the symbol of Duyo's servants. He tried to grab onto this sussy Lord Owl fella only to get almost blinded by a lightning-fast sword draw. Lord Owl slashed away, but Ananta managed to dodge clumsily with sheer instinct. Owl apologized for attacking so abruptly. It's just that his pet peeve is people touching him from behind. Ananta regained his footing and ferociously responded with a haymaker that went wide. Seeing the bloodthirsty look in his eyes, Lord Owl turned serious. Owl hopped back to the guard's position and complained that he shouldn't even be fighting since he was supposed to be off duty today. He found it wildly interesting that even though the young man looked like he was about to drop dead in a single strike, he was still exuding such a horrifying murderous aura. Ananta confronted the man about the coat of arms in his hand, and his relationship to the wings incarnate. As a response, Owl bum-rushed him with the sword in hand, his eyes screaming bloody murder. Ananta's senses are sharp. He managed to step out of the way before the blade could skewer his head, but Owl was relentless. He was attacking with high intensity and the intent to kill. Ananta had to endure some cuts along the way until his back was pushed against the wall. Lord Owl asserted that if he's after something, then he should take it by force. With a wide swing, Lord Owl showed his raptor's claw technique. Owl was surprised that his blade failed to slice through flesh. As it turned out, Ananta managed to summon his incarnate power in time, blocking the attack. Between his dragon arms, he glared at the swordsman with vitriol. The guards finally made themselves useful, and sent someone to report back to the queen and request reinforcements. Reinvigorated, Ananta raised his claws and started going apeshit on the swordsman. Unfortunately for him, attacking fast and loose like a barbarian is not going to work against Lord Owl. But the expert swordsman knew that getting hit by one of these attacks could result in his death. Even still, all he has to do is dodge until Ananta runs out of gas, and that shouldn't take too long now. As soon as the young man showed signs of staggering from his previous injuries, Lord Owl pounced to capitalize on his weakness. It was a clean stab right to the chest, a fatal wound to any normal human out there. But to Ananta, a mortal wound is just another insignificant setback. His flesh visibly stretched and healed around the blade. Lord Owl felt as though he had just stepped into a monster's trap. The young man's face ripped open, exposing rows upon rows of fangs. With a bloody roar, Ananta's black dragon form took over. With an agonized wail, the evil incarnate took over his body once more, pushing what he can endure to the limits. It was obvious that his transformation was not as stable as his previous ones. The civilians who foolishly stayed around the vicinity to watch were abashed by fear. Imagine fighting a damn dragon on your day off. Lord Owl is not having a good day at all. Nevertheless, he stood his ground and slowly drew his blade once more. As the monster came face to face with the swordsman, Lord Owl felt a feeling that he hadn't felt in a long time. Fear. He froze in place, only to get bailed out by Queen Libretha herself. The supreme warrior of Levitane came in swinging with her great sword. Her slash landed squarely on the black dragon's neck, opening a deep gash that bled profusely. The beast roared in pain as it went out of control. While the black dragon bleeds out of his neck, the warriors of the fortress braced themselves as they surrounded the beast from all angles. Nadia and the rest finally caught up. She asserted that Ananta is not an ambi, but the queen firmly believes that anyone who puts her people in danger cannot be left breathing, so this disgraceful beast deserves to get his life cut short right here and right now. The black dragon swiftly moved and raised its claws. Before anyone could react, it swung its sharp weapons, surprising Queen Libretha. Instead of attacking them, the beast dug deep into its neck wound, tearing its own flesh open. He ripped the flesh open, exposing the gore and blood underneath. With superior strength, the monster almost ripped its own body in half with force. The guards have never seen anything like this before. With one final rain of blood, the black dragon's body fell limp on the ground. As the power of the evil incarnate subsided, his body and energy scattered to the wind.